We also have Reverend Mats Tulfjell from the Church of Sweden here. We also have our local hosts, led by the presiding bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Zimbabwe, Chemist Faindi. We have our two local bishops, precisely Reverend Bishop Kenneth Sibanta and Bishop Michael Dube. We have Reverend Elita Moyo of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Zimbabwe, who is also a member of the LWF's Council. We have Ms. Simangaliso Hove, who is the Director of the Lutheran Development Services. And then we have the General Secretary of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Zimbabwe, the Dube. I think this is the group. We want to open with a short statement from the LWF General Secretary, and then we will open up for questions from you. As you are called upon, please, if I may ask you to introduce yourselves again, and also the media you are writing for. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm pleased to stand here next to my host, the presiding bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Zimbabwe. We have been here now for several days upon invitation of the church, which before inviting us to come was already inviting us to pray for the people and the churches in Zimbabwe, particularly because of a situation of drought that is affecting and was affecting the country. So this is what we did. We prayed with and for the church and for the people in Zimbabwe, and now we wanted to follow. We wanted to come and see upon the invitation of the bishop. The Lutheran World Federation is a communion, a family of 148 member churches in 99 countries in the world, bringing together some 80 million members. And together we are here with the church and with the people. I was pleased to see the church ministering, offering its ministry in a context which is challenging. We could hear about the impact of the drought. We could hear what it means to the people, how hard it is for communities and families to find food even, and that hunger is there because of lack of harvest, which is not the first time, we understand, but there has been already a drought the last 2 years. We could see that this drought is exposing economic hardship which has been there already, and we are so concerned to see what the impact of that may be in the future. In all of that, I was grateful to see the churches offering their ministry, working with the communities. The church in Zimbabwe has a long tradition, the Lutheran Church, of serving through schools and health services, and the church is keeping it up, supporting. I was so pleased also to hear a very strong call of the church. I attended worship on Sunday in Bulawayo, and I was so pleased to see a strong call from young people towards peace and dialogue. And they were repeating it constantly. And I know from other parts of the world that when we have to remind ourselves of the need of dialogue and peace, it is because there is tension and there is fragmentation. So I was grateful to see the church heeding that call, because we know from all over the world that the harder the issue is, the more you need to talk. So in this regard, thank you for the opportunity, thank you for being here, and that would be my opening words as a conversation to start our conversation.
We would like to open up for a few questions. Yes.
Churches have been supportive of, sorry, my name is Wallace from churches have been supportive of dialogue. What's your take on dialogue between political parties? Because political parties, some political parties, are refused to come in dialogue.
What we know from other parts of the world that dialogue is extremely important for generating a common space, for generating a common understanding of both the issues we are dealing with, but then also for the vision we have in view of addressing those issues. So I'm in full support of the call that churches have been issuing to sit down, to talk, and to dialogue. I believe that a dialogue, to be a true dialogue, needs to involve as much as forces, as structures as possible. Because only by being a dialogue that involves not only political parties, but also civil society, the different structures that are there, is going to be a dialogue that brings us forward. Let me share a sign of hope I saw. As we visited, I could see a community that had been divided among different things, because of different things, but which started to dialogue, and they constituted a peace committee. And once that peace committee was in place, the community started to work together. Instead of using the forces to fight each other, they started to work together. And they began to think of building different facilities for the society. And the church is very much involved in that. Different facilities. I saw a community building a bridge even. So what did I learn there? Where there is dialogue, there is peace. And where there is peace, there is development.
Yes.
Robert from SlyMedia. Did you manage to meet the political leadership in this country?
I was glad that through the support and upon the request of the presiding bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Zimbabwe, we were able to see the political leadership of the country to pay a courtesy call. And it was very important to me to share my impressions, which are exactly those which I shared with you this morning, and to engage in a short dialogue about it.
Thank you so much. My name is Silvester from Capital FM. Just as a follow-up, you met the president today and you had your chat. Do you have the feeling that his government is working towards addressing the challenges the country is facing?
Yes, we had that discussion this morning with the president of the country. It was a good discussion which we have had. I felt that, and I've heard an acknowledgement of the situation that is caused by different issues and how to possibly address those. I think this is what I could say from the interaction which we have had. He referred to the own efforts of the government also of creating a platform for dialogue. So these are the things I heard as I met him this morning. observed is that the drought has exposed something which was already a challenge, which is the overall economic situation of people. And it has made it harder for so many families, particularly in the rural areas. I've mentioned in my earlier response that I sense that where there is dialogue, there will be peace, and where there is peace, there will be development. And accordingly, I sense that wherever the tensions and the polarization does not allow people to come together, there will be a difficulty in view of developing together as a community, as a village, as a country as a whole.
Yes. When you met President Mnangagwa in the morning, did you raise the issue that you raised about an inclusive dialogue rather than the one that is politicians only?
Yes, and I mentioned this also yesterday as I presented a public lecture which everybody could hear, that a dialogue, to be a genuine dialogue, needs to be a comprehensive dialogue, involving all those who are part of society, so that together there is an identification of the problems that have to be addressed, and together there is also a mapping of the road to take in order to overcome those.
We have a question in the back.
The crowd is
Yeah, those have been mentioned several times during our interactions, and it has also been mentioned how they have impacted the country as a whole, and particularly also the vulnerable population. We understand that through the sanctions, the country is cut off from different opportunities to trade, or then also to receive credit lines, and that of course makes the situation increasingly difficult. At the same time, as I was saying earlier on, despite the sanctions that are there, which are making things difficult as well for the people, there are also issues that can be taken up as the people of Zimbabwe right away, coming together, discussing and overcoming what needs to be overcome.
My name is Max from
Well, first of all, let me say that meeting with the church, I took a lot of hope from the church, because the resilience and also the deep sources in faith that keep hope up. I mentioned earlier on, and we have here the executive director of the Lutheran Development Service, how much the church is doing already in different fields, livelihoods and other work. And our visit here has helped us to understand the situation, and has also helped us to identify for us how we could possibly in future work closer together with the church and its structures to contribute. We cannot solve it. I think the issue is bigger than that, and the primary responsibility for the people of Zimbabwe is with the structures and the government of Zimbabwe. We are willing and able, and we have been, to come in and to support villages and communities, and we have identified ways and will be discussing how to contribute and increase our contribution in this regard.
My name is Silvester. I'm from the Daily News. You mentioned that dialogue needs to be inclusive. I wanted to find out from you what are your thoughts on having external mediation, because currently some parties are for the external mediation while others are saying we don't need external mediation. So what are your thoughts on that?
My experience from other parts of the world is that the first step is to agree on how such a dialogue should take place. And there can be no imposition on the question as to whether to have or whether not to have external mediation. Already that requires the parties to come together and to identify how they can agree to have their dialogue together. So I have no particular opinion. I'm an outsider. I'm coming for some few days in view of whether to have or not to have external mediation in a dialogue. What I would encourage is that the parties identify how they want to have that dialogue and agree on it so that they can begin to have it.
We have time for one or two more questions.
Maybe having met one of the important players in this dialogue we are talking about, who is the president, are you also going to meet one of the other important players as well in the political arena in the form of the MDC president? Are you going to meet him as well?
No, I think the program of my stay in Zimbabwe is coming to a close. Traditionally, the Lutheran World Federation, when it pays visits to the churches, it, as I have said earlier on, offers a courtesy call to the authorities in place. And this is what we have done. We understand that if you begin to meet other parties, it becomes a very long list of whom you have to meet. I have 4 days in Zimbabwe, and that time is not there. So my meeting with the president of the country is a meeting following protocol of a courtesy call, and in that capacity I met him.
Thank you very much. I would like to offer the presiding bishop the chance to say a few words now before we formally close the press conference. Presiding bishop.
I'm happy that we met, and the General Secretary has already said a lot regarding our meeting today. So I'm only grateful that what you have said is really what the church is up to. Peace, reconciliation, dialogue, and everything. That's where we are. And that's the role of the church anyway, to bring people together. Like you know, our Lord Jesus Christ left a very important command: love one another. And otherwise, this is the core business of the church. It's already said by our General Secretary. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.